Good morning, good Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to our service this morning. I'm glad that all of you can join us at this time when people are calling each other horrible names and won't sit down together. Is it not appropriate for us to begin our service at the top of page 70, Hinei ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad, that we all, shevet, sit down, dwell together.
Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad.
We are now in our Torah cycle, reading from the book of Numbers. And very soon, not this week, we will be reading the words we are about to sing on page 74, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, and how fair are your tents, your dwelling places, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel. Ma tovu.
Ya la 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 Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkanotecha Yisrael va'ani berav chastecha avovetecha Eshtachave elecha kodshecha b'yiratecha La 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 Adonai ahavti me'yon betecha u'mikam mishkan kevodecha Va'ani eshtachave ve'echra'a evrecha lifnei Adonai osi La 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 la.
In the middle of page 79, my soul came to me pure, drawn from the reservoir of the holy. All the time it remains within me, I am thankful for its thirst, for compassion and justice. Let my eyes behold the beauty of all creatures. Let my hands know the privilege of righteous deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, asher b'yado nefesh kol chai, v'ruach kol basar ish. 86. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with words of Torah. O Adonai, our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people, Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people, Israel, may know you by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people, Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, hamelamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. Let us turn now to page 102. Even if our mouths were full of song as the sea, and our tongues full of joy in countless waves, and our lips full of praise as wide as the sky's expanse, and were our eyes to shine like sun and moon, if our hands were spread out like heaven's eagles, and our feet swift like young deer. We could never thank you adequately, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, to bless your name for 10,000s of them many myriads of times. You granted favors to our ancestors and to us. Therefore, these limbs which you formed in us, and this spirit and soul that you breathed into our nostrils, this tongue which you have set in our mouths, they must acknowledge, bless, praise, and glorify your name, O our sovereign. For every mouth will acknowledge you, and every tongue pledge homage to you. Every knee bend in your presence. Every upright person shall bow before you. Every heart will revere you, and every inmost thought will sing to your name. And David said, let all my bones exclaim, who is like you, Adonai? As David continued, bless Adonai, O my soul, and let my inner being praise your holy name. On page 105, Yishtabach Shemcha La'ad Malkeinu, you shall always be praised, great and holy God, our sovereign in heaven and on earth. Songs of praise and psalms of adoration become you, acknowledging your might and your dominion. Yours are strength and sovereignty, sanctity, grandeur, and glory always. We offer our devotion, open our hearts in acclamation. Baruch atah Adonai, el melech gadol b'tishbachot, el hahodaot, Adon haniflaot, abocher b'shirei zimra, melech Ha'olamim. Page 108, we rise for the Baruch.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed.
Praise Adonai, to whom praise is due forever. Praise be Adonai, to whom praise is due now and forever. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvorei choshech, oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha berachamim, uftuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Marabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chokma asita, malach haaretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shefach ma'aseh yadecha, va'am or she'asita yafa'arucha sela, or chadash al Tzion ta'ir, v'niskechu lanu mehera le'oro, Baruch atah Adonai yotzer ha'me'orot. On page 112, how deeply you have loved us, Adonai, our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion, on account of our forebears, whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life. Be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah, focus our minds on your mitzvot, unite our hearts in love and reverence for your name. Then we will never feel shame, never deserve rebuke, and never stumble. Having trusted in your great and awesome holiness, we shall celebrate your salvation with joy. Gather us in peace from the four corners of the earth and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us. Truly, you drew us near to your great name, that we might acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. Baruch atah Adonai, abocher ba'amo Yisrael, be'ahava. We continue with the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam.
Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's gracious majesty forever and ever. Please be seated, and we continue on 116 of Yahweh.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר נוהי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להות על ידיך, והיו לתותפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתיכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Middle of page 121. The eternal truth is that you alone are God and there is none else. May the righteous of all nations rejoice in your love and exult in your justice. Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Let nation not lift up sword against nation, nor learn war anymore. You shall not hate your brother or your sister in your heart. The stranger that sojourns with you shall be accepted as your equal, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor? Asked God. You know that the Eternal One defends the poor and upholds the rights of the needy. Praise to God Most High. Blessed is God and deserving a blessing. Milchamocha.
מי כמוך בועלם אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. שירה חדשה שבחו גאולים, לשמך אספר הים, יחד כולם הודו והמלכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך, לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ובדקנו מך, ידע וישראל, גאלנו, אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל, ברוך אתה אדוני, God Israel.
Page 124. Please rise for the tefillah.
Adonai, Sephatai tiftachu v'yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sa'ah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leo, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Vehanoro, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekone Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר, ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה, אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיי הכל אתה, רב להושיע מוריד הטל. מחלקל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומק נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמנתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה, אדוני, מחיי הכל.
We remain standing for the Kedusha on page 130.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך הארץ, כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו, מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו ומלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור. הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ונצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. בשבחך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש, לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Please be seated, and we continue at the bottom of page 132. The people of Israel shall keep Shabbat. Observing Shabbat throughout the ages is a covenant for all time. It is a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day God ceased from work and was refreshed. Page 134, Hacheni.
Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Ritziv emnuchatenu, Kachenu b'mitzvotecha, V'ten chelkenu b'toratecha, Sabenu mituvecha, V'samchenu b'shuatecha, V'taher lebeinu le'avdecha be'emet, Ve'hankilenu Adonai Eloheinu, Be'ahav ratzon Shabbat kodshecha, Ve'anuchu ba'Yisrael Mekadshei shamecha, Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
In the middle of page 137, on this holy Shabbat, may we draw near to life, to peace, and to joy. May we find true rest, holiness in our deeds, worth in our study of Torah. Let us feed on the love of goodness. Let us drink from the love of goodness, restrain our thirst for excess, and cleanse our hearts to serve life well. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer in life, in peace, and in joy. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levatcha, v'yirah na'avod. Page 138. Modim anachnu lach, she'atahu Adonai Eloheinu, v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu le'olam va'ed. We acknowledge with thanks that you are Adonai, our God, and the God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives and the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives which are in your hand, for our souls which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one whose mercies never end, O compassionate one whose kindness never fails, we forever put our hope in you. For all these things, O sovereign, let your name be forever praised and blessed. O God, our Redeemer and Helper, let all who live affirm you and praise your name in truth. Blessed are you, Adonai, your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. On page 141 in the middle, a prayer for peace. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of our world. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Adonai, who blesses your people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamevarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. Let us continue now with a few moments of silent private prayer. Page 253, prayers for healing. Mishabarak avotenu ve'imotenu Avraham, Yitzhak, ve'Yaakov, Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah, hu yivarech et hacholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. We mention in particular friends and members of the congregation and members of our family who aren't doing very well at this time. We mention Ralph Einstein, Stuart Tauber, Bert Silbert, Rabbi Jonathan Katz, Violet Spivak, Jen Hartlove, Jim Gardner, Marlene Gardner. And we think also of all those others who are suffering physically, spiritually, emotionally. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us all say amen as we sing together.
Mishabarak avotenu mekor habracha Elohimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishabarak imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We also offer a prayer of thanksgiving on behalf of those who are feeling better at this time. May the one who has bestowed goodness upon us continue to bestow every goodness upon us forevermore. Page 258, prayers for our community. Source of all being, may the children of this community learn these passions from us: love of Torah, devotion and prayer, and support of the needy. May we guide with integrity, and may our leadership be in your service. May those who teach and nourish us be blessed with satisfaction, and may we appreciate their time and their devotion. Bless us with the fruits of wisdom and understanding, and may our efforts bring fulfillment and joy. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in our work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit, and let us all say amen. Page 259, Avinu Shabashamai.
Avinu, Avinu, Shabashamayim, so Yisrael v'galo. Avinu, Avinu, Shabashamayim, so Yisrael v'galo. Barik, Barik, et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Mechad Geolatenu, Hagin Alecha, Be'evrachashtecha, Uvros Alecha Sukat Shlomecha. שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו. אבינו, אבינו, שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו. ופרוס עליך סוכת שלומך, ושלח אורך ועמך לרשעך, ותקנם בעצה טובה מלפניך, ותקנם בעצה טובה מלפניך. אבינו, אבינו, שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו. אבינו, אבינו, שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו.
In a few moments, we're going to turn to page 282. We're going to conclude this section of the service, and then I'm going to share with you some thoughts regarding a passage in this week's Torah reading and some thoughts about this week's Haftorah reading, after which we can have a discussion if that is your wish. So please turn now to page 282 as we rise for Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated, and a prayer before the Kaddish on the top of 289. In nature's ebb and flow, God's eternal law abides. When tears dim our vision or grief clouds our understanding, we often lose sight of God's eternal plan. Yet we know that growth and decay, life and death, all reveal a divine purpose. God, who has supported the struggles of life, is also our hope in death. We have set God before us and shall not despair. In God's hands are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh. Under God's protection we abide, and by God's love are we comforted. O life of our life, soul of our soul, cause your light to shine into our hearts and fill our spirits with abiding trust in you. We recall the recently departed Joshua Haran, Ronald Lebo, Sophie Pollock, Lee Black, Martin Ross, Al Grossman, Norman Gross, Florence Haar, B. Einstein, Dolores Scholdinger, and Judith Nelson Feldman. We remember those whose yahrzeits occur at this time: Beatrice Alexander, Lydia Garner, Benjamin Gilfitz, Wilson Kaplan, Leonard Ploner, Jeff Posner, Bruce Sands, Ruth Settle, Ben Sharrow, Ralph Singer, Charlotte Tendler. And we keep in our hearts and our thoughts all those whose names weren't mentioned, and may their spirits continue to inspire us to live the kind of life that they would have hoped we would live. Let us turn to page 294 as we rise for the Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, ve'almad yivrach cherutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chayedechol beit Yisrael, v'gala ubisman kariv, ve'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam ul'almei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtapach v'yitpa'ar v'tromam v'tnaseh, v'tadar v'talal shmei dekutsha brechu, la'ela mikol berchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, damiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace grant peace unto those who mourn and comfort the bereaved among us. And let us all say amen. Please be seated. And at this point, let me share with you a few thoughts. And the first, and I've got to put this in a larger but simple context, is a very small section from this week's Torah reading. Now, when I say a very small section, I obviously mean, it goes without saying, I have selected that section. I could have selected several others. In this week's Torah reading, Ukat, we are taught by the rabbis that many of the commandments that we are given in the Torah do not make sense to us, our limited human mind, but because God commanded them, we must observe them. I am going to focus on something that is still observed in the Jewish world. I am in chapter 20, verse 29. It deals with the death of Aaron, Moses' brother. Aaron died. He is stripped of his vestments. They're put on his son Eleazar, and Aaron died on the summit of the mountain. When Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain, the whole community knew that Aaron had breathed his last. All the house of Israel bewailed Aaron 30 days. I'm going to focus on the 30 days. Now, how do you say 30 in Hebrew? Shloshim. And there is a very, very specific custom. We know about the Shiva, which means Shiva, 7. How about the 30 days? And in traditional Jewish life, the 30th day is also a special day for commemoration. I don't know to what extent you have experienced it. It gives people an opportunity to commemorate those who are no longer with us, but also if we're dealing with anyone who is of any significance in the public world or even within our families, opportunity to arrange for people to come from long distances. It's not the last minute type of thing you deal with at a funeral. Many times before, it was so easy just to hop on a plane and go somewhere. Wait a minute, I don't think it's so easy anymore. It's probably harder than it was a year and a half ago. But before it was so easy, people perhaps could not attend the funeral. It was just an accepted reality. And a Shloshim gave you another opportunity. And I will just share personally, I have had the opportunity to attend the Shloshim, the commemoration of some well-known people, where their colleagues, their friends, their families gave special talks in their honor. Now I'm going to try to put this in a different context. Where does the Shloshim custom come from? The practice, the law, basically. And a traditional Jew would say right here from the book of Numbers. I'll accept that. But for all I know, we as a people developed this custom earlier and then looked for a biblical text to back it up. whatever the origin, the chicken egg type thing, I don't know. And on one level, I'm not worrying about it. It is a way of connecting Torah readings and regular practice. And what I just did, I selected something. I could have read the whole thing, but I selected. Now, I want to talk about a different kind of selection, and this is the kind of selection that deals with omission. And I need to be open and tell you what is motivating me right now. I could be talking about this under different circumstances, of course, but I have been, for those of you who have been attending my Tuesday classes, and I'm so sorry we can't meet this coming Tuesday, but the Tuesday after we will, and I have been focusing on museums, Jewish museums. Jewish museums include and exclude. You can't do everything. And even if you try to, what you emphasize is important. And what you leave out is important. I have been doing a significant amount of reading about Jewish museums in Europe, particularly in Poland, and how stories are cleaned up. Polish hatred and violence against Jews through the decades, and not just the time of the Shoah, de-emphasized, if not eliminated. So I see something very interesting in this week's Haftorah reading from the book of Numbers. If you start off reading it and you don't know the context, you would say, okay, here is a military political conflict with the people of Israel and those people who live on the other side of what we would call the Jordan River, where the kingdom of Jordan is today. A leader has to be chosen to fight against them. And Yiftach, Jephthah in English, is the one. He does not have the yichus, the family background that one would be required. In fact, his own family threw him out. His brothers were jealous of him because he was their half-brother and his mother had a less than honorable profession. Need I say any more? He makes a deal with God. And I'm going to read to you what he says. Jephthah says to God, he makes the following oath. Now, saying to God is an oath. We take our words seriously. From a traditional perspective, you don't have to stand up there and put your hand on a Bible. Everything you say is supposed to count anyway. He says to God, if you deliver the Ammonites into my hands, then whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me on my safe return from the Ammonites shall be the Lord's and shall be offered by me as a burnt offering. And needless to say, he succeeds in the military battle. Putting it again in context, people offered sacrifices. The book of Judges has in it a lot of remnants of very, very ancient material, and the thought of a human sacrifice was there. That's where the Haftorah ends. One sentence, or is it two sentences after that? Jephthah crossed over to the Ammonites and attacked them, and the Lord delivered them into his hands. He utterly routed them, and we'll leave out all the place names, all the way to Avel Sharaim, and then the Ammonites submitted to the Israelites. That's not the end of the chapter. The rest is left out. So Jephthah returns home. He made this promise, though. And who is the first person who comes out of the house? His daughter. Now, the moral of the story is be careful what you swear or promise to do. That should be the promise anyway. The other moral of the story is that certain things should counteract certain oaths, and a life of a human being takes precedence, you would think. But the end of the story is she willingly submits, and that is the focus of so many accounts of the Jephthah story in world literature. Our rabbis didn't like that, understandably so. Why they didn't leave this whole section out is beyond me, because when you are choosing what you read from the Haftorah. It's not like the Torah where you start at the beginning and work all the way through. There are selections, and you can leave out what is awkward, embarrassing, a leftover from a different time or a different place. They've dealt with it by leaving out the rest of the chapter. And I sincerely wonder, who on earth knows, how many people in pre-modern times studied the book of Judges out of its context as a Haftorah reading, because the book exists by itself, but it also has a separate identity and message that comes across with the selections in the Haftorah reading. So what we select and what we don't select tells us a lot. And many of us know this story. I will try to illustrate this in our own family lives. Back in ancient times when people had family photo albums, I don't know if that exists anymore. You're supposed to put everything online, etc. You don't need a professional photographer to follow you around. You have somebody take pictures on the phone. But when people had their family photo albums, they sometimes selected by not putting in, or at certain points taking out, pictures of certain people that they no longer liked. The ex-daughter-in-law, for sake of argument, and I'm not particularly focusing on anyone in particular, people would Photoshop, and the family picture, you take people out. We, throughout our history, and the we here is human beings, we have been very selective in what we do. The Polin Museum in Warsaw is very selective. As I said earlier, I have read an enormous amount of material. It's almost obsessing me in the past few weeks. One of my greatest regrets is that I can't read Polish. I wish I could. I'd be reading even more. But the embarrassing parts for the people of Poland, the non-Jews of Poland, that's left out. Now, we should be self-critical. I'm not saying we need to put everything in, but we have to realize that not everything is perfect. Now I'm going to step on other territory. It is absolutely none of my business. And you say that and then you start talking about it anyway. It is absolutely none of my business what the Roman Catholic bishops in this country are doing with regard to who can and who cannot receive communion. That is their religious decision. I do not want to comment on it. But the idea that, and I'll put it in Jewish terms, and I'm going to give two extremes. The idea that certain people are excluded because of wrong practice or wrong belief. Take, for example, the minyan, the quorum for prayer. And I'm changing the subject here completely, but in a way, maybe everything's related. Historically, traditionally, you needed a minyan, a quorum of 10 males, we may say females today, over the age of bar mitzvah, over the age of bar bat mitzvah, to have a formal worship service. You can pray privately, but you have to leave certain things, like the Kaddish, out if you don't have a minyan. Okay. There are people who will say, we will find any Jew we can possibly find and drag that individual over for the minyan. There are even rules as to how many actually have to be praying along, but some can just be sitting there. I'm speaking in traditional terms. Now, I have been in situations at conferences, and not conferences of Reform rabbis, where, let's say, someone who is quite traditional needs to say Kaddish for a parent and wants to put together a minyan, but to have a minyan that is meaningful to that individual, each and every member of that minyan has to be a traditionally observant Jew. In other words, I wouldn't count because I'll drive a car on Shabbat. I wouldn't count. It wouldn't be right in his mind. I could argue a different perspective completely. On the other hand, all the way down the line, and apply this to lots of other religions. When we stand before God with all our sins in front of us on Yom Kippur, the question was raised, how can a person who has lived a horrendous life even come to the service on Yom Kippur? Shouldn't that person be so disgusted with himself or herself not to come? And in the words that are said before and after the Kol Nidre, words that are seldom emphasized in their meaning, it says we, and here it is basically the rabbinic court that is standing there. That's what's happening. More about that on Yom Kippur itself. We give permission to pray with, and I'm using the word I don't like, but sinners, with people who are less than perfect. If we exclude people who are less than perfect, we're excluding everyone, including ourselves. Or if we were all perfect, we wouldn't need Yom Kippur, and then I wouldn't have to spend hours and hours figuring out who gets what honor, and then we have to have committees calling people and all of that. We are imperfect human beings, but God gives us the opportunity to accept that imperfection and try to improve it. Enough of that. I want now, if I may, to turn to Alan Goldfarb, our Vice President, who will give us some announcements, and then maybe we will conclude the service. After we conclude, I'm putting that in quotation marks, we will end the recording, but feel free to stay on, and we might be open to having a little bit of a discussion, which for your sake of privacy and so forth, we will not record. So Alan, do you have some announcements for us?
Yes. Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. And as usual, thank you to you, Kai, for your beautiful accompaniment. We have some nice programs and events coming up for this coming week. On Monday, we have the BIW movie, which will be shown at 1 p.m. via Zoom. And on Tuesday, as the rabbi mentioned previously, we will not have his class being held on Tuesday, but they will resume on the following Tuesday. And again, that would be at 11 a.m. and that would be by Zoom. On Wednesday, something very promising. The Grand Reopening Celebration Committee meeting will meet at 2 p.m. and that will be via Zoom. So you can see we are getting ready, we're getting closer, so we can all be together in the sanctuary during the high holidays, prior to the high holidays, and we can resume our social and educational events. On Thursday, we don't have anything scheduled at the present time. And again, as I always say each week, if something does come up, please check your e-blast, a special e-blast, which will announce the coming event or program, time, and everything else that might be necessary for your interest at that time. On Friday, again, please pick up your Shabbat dinners in the main parking lot between 3 and 3:30 p.m. At 5 p.m., we will have our regular social hour. Again, that's via Zoom. And of course, in the evening at 7:30, we'll have our Shabbat service via Zoom, and you may look at it later on via your YouTube or Facebook. On Saturday, of course, we'll resume again a week from today with our service, Shabbat service at 10 a.m. and Torah study. And again, if you don't see it at 10 a.m., you may see it again at YouTube or on Facebook. And I'd like to mention a few things just in response to some people who have asked me, or congregants have asked me some questions. We will begin the construction project this coming Tuesday. So we are getting closer to the end of the construction that we plan on doing in the temple. Everything else has been completed. It's for your safety and your security. The other thing I'd like to mention is that we would appreciate everybody for your own health and for the health of others to please get vaccinated if you haven't been vaccinated. It is very, very important. And one other thing, I'd like to wish all the fathers out there a very happy Father's Day, and may you have a good day with your children and grandchildren and all your other relatives. Shabbat Shalom and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. Kai, do you want to suggest something as a closing song? And then we will begin our discussion.
Sure. Let's do Ein Adir, page 328 for those who have a book.
For those of us who have books, page 328. Okay, sounds good.
Mipi el, Yevorach kol Yisrael. Mipi el, Yevorach kol Yisrael. Ein adir kadonai, ve'ein baruch kevein amram, ein gedolah kahatorah, ve'ein deshanecha Yisrael. Mipi el, Yevorach kol Yisrael. Mipi el, Yevorach kol Yisrael. Ein hador kadonai, ve'ein vatik kevein amram, ein zaka kahatorah, ve'ein chachamecha Yisrael. Mipi el, Yevorach kol Yisrael. Mipi el, Yevorach kol Yisrael. Ein tahor kadonai, ve'ein yahid kevein amram, ein kavira kahatorah, ve'ein labnanecha Yisrael. Mipi el, Yevorach kol Yisrael. Mipi el, Yevorach kol Yisrael. Ein podeh kadonai, ve'ein tzadik kevein amram, ein kedosha kahatorah, ve'ein tomahecha Yisrael. Mipi el, Yevorach kol Yisrael. Mipi el, Yevorach kol Yisrael.
This will end the recorded part of our service. Let me take a moment to thank Kai for helping us out musically, to thank Corin for all the recording, and to thank Spencer for all the uploading and all the other technical things that hopefully, no, there's no hopefully, it's going to happen, will be a thing of the past, and we will be back in our sanctuary. I want to do one more thing. I noticed someone who was with us this morning, Nicole, that I don't think I know you. And would you do us the favor of either introducing yourself? You are muted at the moment, but let us know who you are and send us your contact information to our office so we can put you on our mailing list.
Good morning, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom. I apologize, I'm a little bit late. I'm not feeling very good lately, so anyway, I'm a friend of Eda Levi.
Oh, sure, yes.
Okay, I know you, Rabbi. We met, a few times.
Of course, I'm probably not recognizing you in the small little square. Yes. Okay, well, good. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I want to welcome you because when we do meet in the sanctuary, we have to remind ourselves that we have a custom at the beginning of every service. Do we have any visitors? Do we have any newcomers? And then we're supposed to say, is anybody celebrating a special birthday? Is anybody celebrating a special wedding anniversary? Does anybody have any children who are graduating from college? We could go on and on forever. But Nicole, welcome. Glad to see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Why don't we end the recording then? And we can begin a discussion if that's what you want.